Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. Please visit our website, cscatlanta.org, for a complete list of live and recorded events. We invite you to sign up for our newsletter to stay connected to all future programs.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Lauren with Cancer Support Community Atlanta. Today we have Blair Avendano, the Oncology Clinical Nutrition Coordinator with Northside Hospital Cancer Institute. And today she is presenting on anemia and nutrition. Thank you, Blair, and I'm turning it over to you.
Well, thank you, Lauren, and thank you everyone for spending your lunch break or your lunchtime with me. I appreciate you being here. Like Lauren said, I oversee the oncology nutrition program at Northside Hospital. We have 22 dietitians. So if you have either had treatment at Northside or you're on active treatment at Northside, we can see you for either of those reasons, as we have a survivorship program now as well. And so it's free of charge. So if any of you are interested in speaking with one of our dietitians, please just let me know and I will give y'all my contact information at the conclusion of this presentation. So as Lauren mentioned, we are going to be discussing anemia and nutrition, and specifically, how can you combat or improve anemia with nutrition? So today we're going to be defining what is anemia. We're going to be identifying and discussing the various nutrients involved in red blood cell production, choosing foods that support your blood health, and also understand when food may not be enough and when supplements may be needed. So let's start out by defining anemia. It occurs when your body does not have enough healthy red blood cells, or when these cells don't contain enough hemoglobin, which a lot of you get that at your blood draw, so you may be familiar with that terminology. Hemoglobin is the protein that carries the oxygen from your lungs through the rest of your body. So when this oxygen delivery decreases, people may begin to feel that fatigue. They may feel tired, weak, shortness of breath, and just less able to do normal daily activities. And that's why anemia can have such a significant impact on quality of life. So for many cancer survivors and patients receiving treatment, anemia is very common. Chemotherapy and radiation can affect bone marrow, so treatment types, where blood cells are produced. Also, just disease states itself. Some of the blood cancers like multiple myeloma, leukemia, lymphoma can affect the bone marrow where the red blood cells are produced. Also, blood loss, chronic inflammation, a decreased appetite, and various nutrient deficiencies that we'll go over can contribute. And even some medicines like NSAIDs, steroids, and antibiotics can affect. In many cases, more than one factor may be involved. So these are some of the common symptoms that somebody may experience with anemia. One of the most common symptoms is fatigue. I hear about this all the time. And it's a lot more than just simply feeling tired or that you didn't sleep enough. It's just that persistent daily lack of energy that doesn't fully improve after you have had a good night's sleep. Many of our survivors or patients that I talk with describe feeling exhausted after activities that previously felt easy, like walking to the mailbox or even going through the grocery store to go grocery shopping. Because red blood cells carry oxygen throughout the body, these low hemoglobin levels can also lead to weakness, shortness of breath, dizziness, and headaches. Some people may even become winded climbing stairs or walking longer distances. Others may feel lightheaded when they stand up too quickly. Pale skin can occur sometimes just because there's fewer red blood cells circulating, and many individuals also notice a reduced ability to exercise or to stay active. So this is not an exhaustive list, but this is just some of the labs that are looked at in regards to hemoglobin and anemia. So when evaluating anemia, hemoglobin is often the first number that patients will hear about or the doctors will discuss. And that just reflects the amount of oxygen carrying protein in your blood. Hematocrit is another one, which measures the percentage of your blood made up from red blood cells. And when either of these values are low, anemia may be present. Ferritin's another one, and that just tells us how much iron is stored in your body. And iron saturation shows how much iron is actually available for use. We also look at vitamin B12 and folate levels because both are essential for producing healthy red blood cells. We can also determine anemia by bone marrow biopsies, imaging tests, and using inflammatory markers. So this makes it a little more complicated, but there's various types of anemia as well. So that's why we really want to hone in on identifying the underlying cause. Different types of anemia require different treatment approaches. So there's iron deficiency anemia, which is very common, and that's just when the body doesn't have enough iron to make healthy red blood cells. It's one of the most common, often related to inadequate intake, poor absorption, or blood loss. And then there's anemia of chronic disease, which is common in people living with cancer and other chronic illnesses. So in this situation, it's a little bit different. Inflammation affects the body's ability to use and store iron effectively, even when iron levels appear adequate. And then there's vitamin B12 deficiency and folate deficiency anemia, which occur when the body lacks the nutrients to produce healthy red blood cells. And these also may be from poor intake, absorption issues, or certain medications. And then finally, treatment-related anemia can occur during chemo, radiation, and other cancer therapies, and that can just affect your bone marrow function in general. All right, let's get on to nutrition. Nutrients needed to make those healthy red blood cells. There's a list here. Um, these red blood cells aren't just going to appear on their own. It does require this variety of nutrients, and they work synergistically to make red blood cells. So iron is considered to be the star nutrient just because it is a key component of hemoglobin, and it's required to make healthy red blood cells efficiently. So we're going to talk a good bit about vitamin C today. I think a lot of patients are surprised with how much this has to do with combating anemia. And it plays more of a supporting role in helping the body actually absorb the iron from plant-based foods specifically. We're going to talk a good bit about pairing iron-rich foods with vitamin C foods in order to increase absorption. So again, B12 and folate are both essential for producing and maturing red blood cells. So we'll talk about that. Protein, if you've ever met with me or one of my dietitians or your oncologist, you have heard all about protein. And this seminar will be no different. In this case, protein does provide the building blocks necessary to create hemoglobin, red blood cells, and those bone marrow cells. An adequate protein intake is especially important during cancer treatment and also in recovery. Vitamin B6 and copper are lesser known nutrients in regards to anemia, but they do also contribute to healthy red blood cell production and iron metabolism. So let's start with the star of our show, and that is iron. What does it do? It again helps carry oxygen in the blood throughout the body. It supports energy levels. It helps promote physical growth and neurological development, promote cell function, and it also helps make some hormones. So iron food sources, and this is very important. We want to start out by dividing them into two categories. One is heme iron, and that's going to come from your animal-based foods. So this iron does not necessarily require vitamin C for absorption. Okay, so it's going to be much better absorbed by the body. So that's going to include things like beef, chicken, pork, fish, eggs, and liver. And then on the right, you'll see the non-heme iron, and those are going to be your plant iron sources. And that's going to be things like beans, nuts, spinach, soy foods, fortified cereals, and even some dark chocolate. So yes, dark chocolate can have health benefits. So this is a top list, some gold medalists in regards to top iron-rich foods. On the left are some of the richest animal-based sources of iron. Lean beef is one of the best known sources, and a lot of patients come in asking, do I need to eat lean beef to have good iron in my blood? And that's not necessarily the case. You'll see there's other options for you as well. Turkey and chicken thighs also contain iron and can be really great options for people who prefer poultry choices. Shellfish, like oysters and clams, are actually among the most iron-rich foods available and provide substantial amounts of iron in relatively small portions. So there's a lot of bang for your buck with those two types of seafood. And on the right, you'll see several plant-based sources of iron. Lentils, black beans, kidney beans, tofu, pumpkin seeds are all excellent choices for individuals who are following a vegetarian diet, a vegan diet, or just a very plant-forward eating pattern. And these are great because they also provide fiber, protein, and other beneficial nutrients. And then another source that I mentioned earlier, but isn't on this specific slide, is fortified breakfast cereals have a bunch of iron. Some of them have 18 milligrams or more, and that's 100% daily value for most adults. So again, you don't have to eat just red meat to get enough iron. There's plenty of other options. Particularly if you pair your plant sources with a source of vitamin C, you can get an adequate iron. All right. So vitamin C is iron's buddy. It's his partner in crime. It's what you want to have eat together. So it doesn't directly make those red blood cells, but it does help the body absorb the non-heme iron. And this is especially important for my patients who are trying to eat little or no meat because non-heme iron is naturally harder for the body to absorb. So adding a vitamin C rich food to a meal can significantly increase the amount of iron your body's able to use. And you'll see some good sources listed here. I think people always think of citrus fruits, and while that's true, there's other sources of really great sources of vitamin C. Strawberries are amazing. Oranges, kiwi, tomatoes, bell peppers, broccoli are all good sources of vitamin C. And I love these because many of these foods can be easily added to meals and snacks throughout the day. And you don't need large amounts of them. Just including one vitamin C rich foods at the same meal as iron containing foods is usually sufficient. And I'm going to put a plug right here for not taking vitamin C megadoses while on treatment because that can potentially interfere with chemotherapy or radiation therapy. And by megadoses, I mean supplements that exceed 100% daily value, like your emergency during the winter and things like that. And just vitamin C in pill form in general. We want to, try as much as possible to stick to the food sources. So these are some examples to help, spur some creativity on combining foods that help your body absorb more of that iron. Again, putting a plug in for the iron fortified cereals. Those already contain iron, but adding some strawberries can help your body absorb more of it. Beans paired with tomatoes is another good option. Lentil soup, adding some orange slices on the side can be great. Spinach salad topped with strawberries, or it's another way to boost iron absorption. And for those of you who like stir fry, if you want to try a tofu stir fry and throw in some bell peppers, that can help. None of these combinations require special supplements or expensive foods, just some thoughtful meal planning. And again, if you've been to my other seminars or you have met with me personally, you'll also hear me talk about adding color to your plate. And so, adding vitamins, minerals from fruits and vegetables also helps add those cancer fighting and cell protecting antioxidants, in addition to adding vitamin C to help with iron absorption. Okay, calcium and iron. So calcium is very important for bone health, but a lot of patients are surprised to learn that it can temporarily reduce iron absorption. So remember, vitamin C helps with iron absorption. Calcium and iron can actually compete with one another for absorption. And so it is important to separate your calcium intake from your iron intake as much as possible. And I definitely don't want you to avoid calcium containing foods. It's essential for cancer survivors, as a lot of treatments and cancer itself can cause risk for bone loss. And so we do want to have our calcium. It's just all about the timing. So common calcium-rich foods include your dairy products like milk, yogurt, cheese, as well as fortified orange juice. Calcium fortified plant milks, like almond milk, usually has calcium added to it. Tofu made with calcium, sardines with bones, and even some leafy greens. For most people, just planning and eating a balanced diet throughout the day is going to provide enough separation naturally. But however, if you do have an iron deficiency diagnosis or you're taking an iron supplement, it may be helpful to take your iron at a different time for your calcium-rich foods or calcium supplements. So I usually tell my patients to try to make about a 2 hour window between your calcium and your iron supplements just to make sure that they are absorbed, very well. And then this may just add an extra layer to meal planning just to make sure that you're not having extremely high calcium sources with your vitamin C and your iron. Okay, so here's another, I want to say, enemy of iron absorption. Coffee and tea are beverages many of us enjoy every day. Nothing wrong with them. However, they do contain natural compounds called polyphenols and tannins. And just like calcium, these can reduce iron absorption, and especially related to non-heme iron from plant foods. Okay. So absolutely do not give up coffee or tea, but just again, focus on timing and try to enjoy these beverages maybe between meals if you're not, trying to get in your iron consumption as snacks rather than with meals. So about a 2 hour separation with coffee and iron-rich foods is probably pretty sufficient. And if you're eating an iron-rich meal or taking an antioxidant, just be mindful of this in order to allow your body to absorb more of the iron you're consumed. So, for example, if you're having, say, your iron fortified cereal with strawberries for breakfast, you may want to wait until mid-morning to enjoy your coffee, or vice versa if you are a coffee in the, first thing in the morning type of person. And this is especially important if you have been diagnosed with iron deficiency anemia. Protein. Protein is another important nutrient when we're talking about blood health again. While iron does get most of the attention, your body is going to need adequate protein to build red blood cells, hemoglobin, and your bone marrow cells. And so, again, we want to think of protein as the building material to create and repair tissues. Without enough of it, your body's going to have a much harder time producing the healthy red blood cells, even if your iron is adequate. So just remember that. On the right side of the slide are example of protein-rich foods. Animal sources, again, like poultry, fish, eggs, and dairy are going to provide that high-quality protein that contains all essential amino acids that your body needs. But there's also plant-based options like beans and soy foods that can be excellent choices and provide additional nutrients like fiber and iron. So for cancer survivors, maintaining adequate protein intake is super important as it helps with healing, preserve muscle mass, it helps support your immune function, and then assists with general recovery from treatment. So that's why you'll always hear your dietitian or your oncologist talk about protein. So just the simple goal is to include a source at every meal and snack. That way you'll likely get in as much protein as you need throughout the day. So you can do eggs with your breakfast, you can do turkey and beans at lunch, fish, chicken, tofu at dinner, and then just throw some protein-rich snacks in there in between. All right, vitamin B12 is another key nutrient in red blood cell production. It's important for nervous system health, and low levels may cause symptoms like numbness or even tingling in your hands and your feet, balance problems, memory changes, or even difficulty concentrating. So sometimes these symptoms will even appear before the anemia is detected. So it's just a red flag. And most vitamin B12 is going to be naturally found in animal-based foods, including fish, poultry, eggs, milk, yogurt, and cheese, as well as some fortified foods like breakfast cereals and nutritional yeast can provide vitamin B12. So I would say my patients most at risk for deficiency are those who are following a vegan or a vegetarian diet, which makes sense since the vitamin B12 rich sources are primarily animal-based foods. A lot of those patients oftentimes do have to take a supplement if they have low vitamin 12 or even vitamin B12 injections. Also, patients who have had any type of GI surgery, that's one to watch out for deficiency. And then just monitoring that blood work. If you have a low level, you may need to be supplemented. Folate is another important nutrient involved in making healthy red blood cells. You may also hear it called vitamin B9, but probably more often you'll hear folate. So it's going to work in conjunction with vitamin B12 to help the body produce and mature red blood cells in bone marrow. So when your folate levels are low, your body may struggle to make those healthy red blood cells, which can lead to folate deficiency anemia. And because folate and vitamin B12 work together, healthcare providers often evaluate both nutrients when investigating anemia. So many of your folate-rich foods are going to come from plants, which make them excellent side dishes or just additions to meals in general. Many of you have probably heard, primary sources are going to be your nice leafy greens. You see a picture of spinach there. Also, kale, romaine lettuce are some of the richest sources. You can also do beans, lentils, asparagus, avocado, and peas to get your folate in addition to fortified grain products. So some simple ways to boost your folate intake are adding spinach to smoothies. If you're not a big spinach fan, I love adding spinach to smoothies because it takes on that fruity sweet flavor, and so it actually masks the flavor of spinach, and so that can be very helpful for patients. You can also throw a handful in omelets. You can enjoy lentil soup to get some folate in. Throw beans on your salads. That's another good one. You can add chickpeas or black beans and things like that. Fortified cereals that have had folate added to it, and whole grains as part of your breakfast. All right, so here's some more ideas and options for an anemia-friendly plate. We're going to put together everything we've already discussed and just how can we practically do this in our daily lives for meals. Um, so it's gonna typically include several elements. Again, those iron-rich foods with nutrients that help the body use iron effectively. We're especially going to include some vitamin C and protein. So rather than focus on a simple superfood, it's just helpful to keep in mind we're trying to build a balanced plate here. So for breakfast, iron fortified cereals paired with strawberries. It's an example we've used a couple times, but that's a good one. Another one is oatmeal, and if you want to put pumpkin seeds and orange slices together with that, that's a good option. And if you're a hot breakfast type of person, eggs, again, you can throw tomatoes and spinach in your eggs. Also enjoy some whole grain toast is another good way to boost your iron intake. And then for lunchtime, you can do a turkey sandwich with tomato slices, some of the vitamin C rich fruit is a good option. Lentil soup, we're big into lentils at our house right now. You can even put tomatoes in your lentils, which can be very good. Um, and also a bowl of black beans with salsa. And you can even have some tortilla chips with that. And then for dinner time, just some maybe lean ground beef with a side of broccoli and a sweet potato. You can do salmon with roasted vegetables, and then also bean chili with tomatoes is another good one. All right, so iron supplements and infusions. Iron can be available in some multivitamins, but more often than not, it's taken as a separate supplement if it's needed or if you're deficient. And the most common types of iron supplements you'll see are ferrous sulfate and ferrous gluconate. And these forms are just going to be much better absorbed, but other types may be easier on the stomach. Sometimes they can cause a little bit of GI distress, constipation, things like that. So it's just important if you are experiencing that to just stay connected to your healthcare provider and just let them know. So daily iron needs vary. It's generally about 8 milligrams per day for males and 18 for women of childbearing age. But once adults turn 50, it's going to go back down to about 8 milligrams for all individuals over 50. And then sometimes doctors will recommend more if that patient is deficient. And just another key note, if you are being supplemented with calcium and iron, again, take 2 hours apart. It's also good if you want to take your iron supplement with a little bit of orange juice, because remember that vitamin C is going to help with the iron absorption. And please avoid taking it with milk because, again, calcium is going to compete for iron absorption. Some cancer patients and survivors have to receive IV iron infusions. Maybe they're not tolerating the supplement or it's just not enough. Um, or their iron stores are very low, or if rapid replacement is needed, your oncologist or physician may recommend infusions. And then also sometimes red blood cell infusions are needed if your hemoglobin is very low. So managing fatigue, I would say other than nausea, the symptom I hear about the most is fatigue with patients. It's one of the most common symptoms that people experience when they have anemia, but nutrition is only going to be one piece of that puzzle. So here's some other things that you can do to combat that fatigue. The first one is stay active, which can be very counterintuitive because activity requires energy. And if you have fatigue, you may not feel like doing anything. But once you start becoming more active, it actually gives you more energy. And it doesn't have to be anything major, just walking a few minutes a day, whatever you can tolerate. Stretching, light exercise. I have patients that like to do chair yoga that may have some limited mobility, but all that adds up and is helpful to just stay active and moving throughout the day and try not to spend too much time sitting or laying in bed. Sleep is also critical. So poor sleep can worsen fatigue regardless of what your blood counts are. So just trying to maintain a consistent sleep schedule, try to avoid blue light a couple of hours before sleep, and just discuss any ongoing sleep problems with your physician can all be very helpful. Another huge cause of fatigue is not being hydrated enough. So just making sure that you're drinking enough water. If you're working with a dietitian, based on your height and weight, that individual could help you figure out about how much water you need in a day. Managing stress is important because chronic stress can drain energy and affect sleep quality. So that's all things are connected in some way. Um, and then continuously follow up on lab work per your oncologist or your doctor's recommendations. All right, so let's combat some myths here. The first one is that everyone with anemia simply just needs iron and everything will be better. So as we discussed, iron deficiency is a common cause of anemia, but it's not the only cause. So anemia can also result from B12 deficiency, folate deficiency, inflammation, kidney disease, cancer treatments, blood loss, or bone marrow disorder. So there's a lot of reasons why patients can be anemic. And so that's why it's so important to identify the underlying cause with your healthcare practitioner. The second myth is that if some iron is good, more is better. And in reality, too much iron can be harmful. It can cause those digestive side effects that I mentioned, and it can interfere again with the absorption of other nutrients like calcium and can even accumulate in organs such as the liver and the heart. And so your doctor can help you with how much you need there. So don't try to self-diagnose or treat anemia yourself. Make sure that you're working with your doctor on that and your dietitian with your diet. All right, key takeaways from today. You are not alone. Anemia is quite common among cancer patients and survivors. Iron is important, but there are various other nutrients that are involved. Vitamin C is going to help with iron absorption. Calcium, coffee, and tea can interfere with iron absorption. Protein, B12, and folate are going to support your healthy red blood cell production. And discuss any supplements you're taking with your healthcare team.
Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. If you're interested in other live or recorded programs, please visit the online program tab of our website, cscatlanta.org, or follow us on Facebook. We'll be sharing additional information on upcoming programs.